Have you ever wondered what happens to a room after someone dies in it? Do the walls remember? Does the air hold their last breath? And what if death isn't an ending? What if it's just a different kind of checkout time? The Grandview Hotel stood on the corner of 5th and Madison like a relic from another era. Its Art Deco facade crumbling at the edges, its neon sign flickering with the letter G, perpetually dark. It wasn't the kind of place tourists sought out anymore. The guests who stayed there were the kind who paid in cash, who kept their curtains drawn, who existed in the margins of society. And Marcus Webb, night receptionist for the past 2 years, had learned not to ask questions. The lobby smelled of old carpet and lemon cleaner that never quite masked the underlying scent of decay. Marcus sat behind the mahogany desk, its surface scarred with cigarette burns from decades past, watching the security monitors flicker between empty hallways. The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m., the graveyard shift they called it. He'd always thought that was a joke until 3 months ago. Room 313 had been empty since May. That's when Gerald Hartwell, a traveling salesman with thinning hair and a wedding ring he never wore, had locked himself inside and opened his wrists in the bathtub. The chambermaid, Rosa, had found him the next morning. She'd quit that same day, crossing herself repeatedly as she walked out, muttering prayers in Spanish. The hotel had paid for a professional cleaning crew, replaced the carpet, repainted the walls. But they couldn't rent the room. No one wanted to sleep where someone had chosen to stop living. Marcus didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in overdue bills, in the weight of student loans, in the particular exhaustion that came from working overnight while the rest of the world dreamed. He believed in what he could see, touch, prove. The supernatural was just a story people told themselves to make sense of a senseless world. The phone rang. It was the old landline system, the kind with actual bells that jangled instead of the soft electronic chirp of modern phones. Marcus glanced at the switchboard. Extension 313 lit up in amber. His hand hovered over the receiver. Probably a malfunction. The building was old, the wiring older. Crossed signals, electrical interference. There were a dozen rational explanations. He picked up the phone. "Front desk, this is Marcus. How can I help you?" Static crackled on the line, thick and wet-sounding like someone breathing through water. Then, a voice. Male, raspy, distant. "I can't find my key." Marcus felt his skin prickle. "Sir, room 313 is currently vacant. You must have the wrong—" "I can't find my key," the voice repeated. Exactly the same inflection, the same cadence. "I need to get in." "Sir, there's no one registered to that room. If you're a guest, what name is your reservation under?" The line went dead. Marcus stared at the receiver, his heart doing something uncomfortable in his chest. He looked at the security monitor for the 3rd floor. The hallway was empty, illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly unreal. Room 313's door remained closed, a "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging from the handle, even though housekeeping had been instructed to remove it weeks ago. He told himself it was a prank. Some kid with too much time had hacked the phone system, or maybe it really was just faulty wiring. The Grandview was held together by duct tape and denial. He made a note to call maintenance in the morning and turned back to his phone, scrolling through social media feeds to distract himself. 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. Extension 313. This time, Marcus's hand shook slightly as he answered. "Front desk." "Why did you leave her?" the voice asked. Not the same question as before. A different question. A personal question. Marcus's mouth went dry. "Who is this? Why did you leave her alone that night?" "This isn't funny. I'm going to call the police if—" "She called you 17 times. You saw every call. You just didn't answer." The phone slipped from Marcus's grip, clattering against the desk. He stared at it like it was a living thing, something venomous and coiled. His breath came in short gasps. No one knew about that. No one. It had been 4 years ago, the worst night of his life, and he'd never told anyone the complete truth. His sister, Amanda, 23 years old, struggling with depression, living alone in a studio apartment across town. She'd been having a bad week, he knew that. She'd texted him earlier that day asking if they could talk. He'd been at a party, drunk, flirting with a girl whose name he couldn't remember now. He'd seen Amanda's calls coming in, one after another, and he'd thought, she's just being dramatic. She always gets like this. I'll call her tomorrow. Tomorrow had been too late. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward and hitting the wall. He grabbed his master keycard and a flashlight. He wasn't going to sit here and let some sick bastard play mind games with him. He was going to march up to the 3rd floor, unlock room 313, and prove to himself that it was empty, that there was a rational explanation, that there had to be. The elevator groaned as it carried him upward, cables creaking in the shaft. The numbers above the door lit up in sequence. 1, 2, 3. The doors opened with a sound like a sigh. The 3rd floor hallway stretched before him, longer than he remembered. The carpet had a pattern of interlocking diamonds in burgundy and gold, worn down the center where decades of feet had tread. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one of them strobing on and off in a rhythm that felt almost deliberate. Room 313 was at the end of the hall, and as Marcus walked toward it, he had the irrational feeling that the corridor was getting longer with each step, that he was walking on a treadmill making no progress. But then he was there, standing in front of the door. The "Do Not Disturb" sign swayed slightly, though there was no breeze. Marcus pressed his ear against the wood. Silence, nothing but the hum of the ice machine at the far end of the hall. He raised the keycard to the lock. His hand was steady now, fueled by anger more than courage. The lock clicked. The light turned green. He pushed the door open. The room was dark, except for the pale glow of the city filtering through the thin curtains. Marcus swept the flashlight beam across the space. A queen bed with the covers pulled tight. A dresser with a mirror above it. A chair in the corner. The bathroom door stood half open, revealing white tile and chrome fixtures. Empty, completely empty. Marcus released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. See? Nothing. Just electrical problems and his own guilty conscience conjuring ghosts. He was about to leave when his flashlight caught something on the nightstand. A room service menu. Flipped open to a page. Marcus stepped closer. Someone had circled an item in red pen. The club sandwich. Gerald Hartwell's last meal. Rosa had mentioned it. How she'd delivered it to him herself that final evening. How he'd seemed calm, almost peaceful. How he'd tipped her $20 and told her to have a good night. But the menu hadn't been here when the room was cleaned. Marcus was certain of that. He'd watched the cleaning crew himself had done the final inspection. The room had been stripped bare. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Not the desk phone, his personal cell. He pulled it out, the screen bright in the darkness. A text message. From a number he'd deleted 4 years ago but still recognized. Amanda's number. You knew I needed you? Marcus's vision swam. This wasn't possible. Amanda's phone had been disconnected. Her number had been recycled, assigned to someone else. He'd checked months after her funeral, in a moment of weakness, when he'd thought about calling just to hear it ring into the void. Another text. You always knew. His fingers trembled as he typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came immediately. Room 313 knows all your secrets, every call you ignored, every lie you told yourself, every moment you chose yourself over someone else. Marcus backed toward the door, his heart hammering. He needed to get out of this room, out of this hotel, maybe out of this city. He'd quit, walk out right now, let someone else deal with. The bathroom light flickered on. He froze. Through the half-open door he could see the fluorescent bulb stuttering to life above the mirror. Then came the sound of water running. Not the sink, the bathtub. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but something else. Guilt, responsibility, The need to understand pulled him forward. He pushed the bathroom door fully open. The tub was filling with water, the faucet turned on full blast. But there was something wrong with the water. It was dark, rust-colored, spreading out in swirls like ink, like blood diluted in water. The same way it must have looked 3 months ago when Gerald Hartwell made his final decision. Marcus lunged forward and wrenched the faucet off. The water stopped. In the sudden silence, he could hear his own ragged breathing, see his terrified face reflected in the mirror above the sink. Then he saw the words. They were written on the mirror in condensation, as if someone had traced them with a finger from the inside. But the bathroom was cold, not steamy. There was no reason for condensation. "What secrets are you keeping now?" Marcus stumbled backward, his hip hitting the edge of the sink. The pain was sharp, real, grounding. He turned and ran from the bathroom, from the room, from the accusation dripping down the glass. He slammed the door behind him and stood in the hallway gasping, trying to convince himself that he'd imagined it, that stress and sleep deprivation could make you see things that weren't there. The elevator seemed too far away. He took the stairs instead, his footsteps echoing in the concrete stairwell, taking them 2 at a time until he burst back into the lobby. The familiar space should have been comforting, but it felt different now, contaminated. Like room 3113 had leaked out into the rest of the building. The phone was ringing again, extension 3113 glowing on the switchboard like an accusation. Marcus grabbed it. "What do you want from me?" he shouted into the receiver. "The truth," the voice said. Clearer now. Closer. "You're doing it again, Marcus. You're letting someone down. Someone who needs you. I don't know what you're talking about. Your mother. When's the last time you called her?" Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. His mother. Christ, his mother. She'd been leaving messages for the past 2 weeks. Nothing urgent, just checking in, wanting to hear his voice. She'd sounded lonely, and he'd been meaning to call her back, he really had, but he'd been busy, tired, and it was never the right time, and anyway, she was fine. She didn't really need him. She just wanted to chat, and... "She has something to tell you," the voice said. "Something important, but you won't answer, just like before." "She's fine," Marcus said, but his voice cracked. I'll call her tomorrow. I'll call her first thing." "That's what you said about Amanda." The line went dead. Marcus dropped the phone. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely pull out his cell. He found his mother's contact, pressed call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. At 3 a.m., she wouldn't be awake, of course she wouldn't. This was insane, but... "Marcus?" Her voice was groggy but alert, the way parents always sound when their children call at odd hours, instantly ready for crisis. "Mom, I'm sorry, I know it's late, are you okay? Is everything okay?" A pause. Then, "I've been trying to reach you." His throat tightened. "I know. I'm sorry. I've been busy and I went to the doctor last week," she said quietly. "They found something, a lump. They're doing a biopsy on Friday." The lobby tilted. Marcus gripped the edge of the desk to steady himself. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you?" "I did tell you. I left you 3 messages. I texted you. I said I needed to talk, that it was important." Her voice wasn't accusatory, just sad. Resigned. "But you didn't call back, and I thought maybe you were dealing with your own things. I didn't want to burden you." "Mom, He couldn't finish the sentence. What could he say? That he'd been too wrapped up in his own small life to return her calls? That he'd assumed nothing could be that urgent? That he'd learned nothing from losing Amanda? "I'm coming over," he said. "Right now. I'm leaving work and coming over." "Marcus, it's 3 in the morning. I'm fine tonight. Come tomorrow during the day, we'll talk then." "No, I need to..." "Tomorrow," she said firmly. "Get some sleep. We'll face this together. I promise." After they hung up, Marcus sat in the silence of the lobby, his mother's words echoing in his head. The shame was overwhelming, a physical weight pressing down on his chest. He'd done it again. He'd prioritized his comfort over someone else's need. And if room 313 hadn't called, if the ghost of Gerald Hartwell or whatever haunted this place hadn't forced him to face his pattern, he might have kept putting it off until it was too late again. The phone rang. Extension 313. This time, Marcus picked up immediately. "I understand," he said. "I get it. You're right. I'm the same person who let my sister down. I haven't changed. But you can." The voice was different now, softer, almost kind. "That's why I'm still here, Marcus. That's why I haven't checked out." "Gerald?" Marcus whispered. "I made my choice that night," the voice said. "I decided I didn't want to face my mistakes anymore. But you still have time. You can still answer the calls. You can still show up." "Why me? Why are you telling me this?" A long pause, filled with that wet static, that sound like breathing underwater. "Because you work the night shift, because you're here when everyone else is sleeping. Because the lonely recognize the lonely, Marcus, and I'm so very lonely up here in room 313. What do you need? How can I help you?" "Tell my wife I'm sorry." The voice was fading now, growing distant. "Tell her I should have asked for help. Tell her the darkness wasn't her fault. Tell her." The line crackled and hissed. Marcus pressed the receiver harder against his ear. "Tell her what? Gerald? Gerald, what should I tell her?" But there was only silence now. Then, a dial tone. Marcus looked at the switchboard. Extension 313 had gone dark. He sat there for the rest of his shift, not moving, barely breathing. As the sun rose and painted the lobby in shades of gold and orange, the hotel transformed. It looked almost beautiful in the morning light, the way old things sometimes do when you catch them at the right angle. The day shift receptionist Maria arrived at 7 a.m., cheerful and chattering about her daughter's soccer game. Marcus gathered his things slowly. Before he left, he looked up the records from 3 months ago. Gerald Hartwell. He found an address listed as emergency contact, Mrs. Patricia Hartwell, in a suburb 40 minutes away. He wrote it down. That evening, after sleeping fitfully through the day, Marcus drove to his mother's house. They sat at her kitchen table, the same table where he'd eaten breakfast before school for 18 years, and she told him about the lump, about her fears, about the biopsy. He held her hand and listened, really listened. He didn't check his phone, didn't make excuses, didn't promise to be there later. He was there now. Over the next few weeks, Marcus went with her to appointments. He sat in waiting rooms with magazines he didn't read, held her purse while she changed into hospital gowns, asked doctors the questions she was too scared to ask. The biopsy came back benign, but that wasn't the point. The point was that he'd shown up. The point was that he'd answered the call. He also found Patricia Hartwell. It took some courage, but he called her, told her he was the night receptionist at the Grandview, that he'd been working when her husband died. She agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near her home. Patricia Hartwell was younger than he'd expected, with kind eyes and hands that shook slightly when she held her cup. Marcus told her about the phone calls, about the messages. He expected her to think he was crazy, but she just nodded. "Gerald was always terrible at asking for help," she said softly. "He thought it made him weak. I knew he was struggling, but he kept saying he was fine, and I wanted to believe him." Her eyes filled with tears. "I should have pushed harder. I should have seen through his lies." "He wanted me to tell you something," Marcus said. "He wanted you to know it wasn't your fault, that the darkness was his own, that he should have asked for help." Patricia pressed a napkin to her eyes. "I needed to hear that. Even if it sounds crazy, even if it was just your subconscious or whatever rational explanation exists, I needed to hear that." They talked for an hour. When Marcus left, he felt lighter somehow, like he'd delivered a message that had been waiting 3 months to be sent. Marcus gave his notice at the Grandview Hotel a month later. He'd found a better job, better hours, better pay. On his last night shift, he stood in the lobby and looked around at the worn furniture, the flickering lights, the old switchboard with its amber buttons. Extension 313 lit up. He picked up the phone one last time. "Hello?" Silence. Then barely audible, like a voice carried on wind. "Thank you." The line clicked. The light went out. And Marcus knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that Gerald Hartwell had finally checked out. The new night receptionist was a college kid named Tyler, eager and nervous. Marcus showed him the ropes, explained the quirks of the old building, where to find the emergency numbers. He didn't mention room 3 on 13. Some lessons, he thought, you have to learn yourself. As Marcus walked out of the Grandview Hotel for the last time, the morning sun breaking over the city, he thought about Amanda, about all the calls he hadn't answered, all the moments he'd chosen comfort over connection. He couldn't change the past, couldn't bring her back, couldn't undo his mistakes. But he could answer the phone now. He could show up. He could be present for the people who needed him, before their need became a ghost haunting his periphery. His phone buzzed. His mother sending a photo of her garden, the flowers she'd planted coming into bloom. He smiled and typed back immediately. "Beautiful. Want company for dinner tonight?" Her response came quickly. "I'd love that." Marcus put his phone in his pocket and kept walking. Behind him, the Grandview Hotel stood against the morning sky, its broken sign, its crumbling facade, its secrets locked in empty rooms. Room 313's window caught the sunlight, and for just a moment, Marcus thought he saw a figure there, a shadow standing by the glass. But when he blinked, it was gone. Some guests check out, some never do. And some, Marcus had learned, stay just long enough to teach you the lesson you need to learn. He drove home through streets coming alive with morning traffic, past people heading to work, to school, to wherever their lives were taking them. He thought about connection and loneliness, about the calls we answer and the ones we don't, about the thin line between the living and the dead. And he promised himself that he would never again let fear or convenience or exhaustion keep him from answering when someone reached out. Because the ghosts that haunt us aren't always supernatural. Sometimes they're just the echo of our own failures, replayed in empty rooms, waiting for us to finally pay attention. Room 313 was empty now, but Marcus carried its lesson with him, a weight that had transformed from guilt into responsibility, from haunting into healing. The guest who never checked out had finally found peace, and in the process, had saved someone who was still alive, still capable of change, still able to answer the phone before it was too late. Marcus turned on the radio, letting music fill the car, and drove toward the rest of his life. One call at a time, one connection at a time, one moment of showing up at a time. The sun climbed higher. The city spread out before him, full of people carrying their own secrets, their own regrets, their own ghosts. And somewhere in a hotel where the lonely go to hide, a phone sat silent on a desk, its amber light dark, waiting for the next person who needed to learn that the only thing more terrifying than facing your mistakes is running from them forever. The choice, as always, was simple. Check out or check in, run or face it, ignore the call or pick up the phone. Marcus had made his choice, and as he pulled into his driveway, preparing to spend the day with his mother to be present for the people he loved, he felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years, something that felt almost like forgiveness, rising like dawn over a dark landscape. The dead can't change, but the living can. That was the real horror story, not ghosts or hauntings, but the tragedy of potential wasted, of calls unanswered, of people left alone in their darkness because we were too afraid or too selfish or too tired to reach back. Gerald Hartwell had learned that lesson too late. Marcus had learned it just in time. And in the space between those two truths lay all the difference between tragedy and redemption, between a guest who never checks out and one who finally finds the door. Somewhere in room 313 of the Grandview Hotel, the phone sat silent. The water in the bathtub was still. The mirror bore no messages. The room was just a room again, empty, waiting, holding no secrets but its own. And that, Marcus thought, as he opened his car door and stepped into the sunlight, was exactly as it should be. If you enjoyed this story of supernatural redemption and second chances, subscribe to never miss another chilling tale that will make you think twice before ignoring that next phone call. Share your own experiences with guilt, forgiveness, or unexplained hotel encounters in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories might inspire the next nightmare I write. Remember, the scariest monsters aren't the ones under the bed. They're the ones we create through our own neglect of the people who need us. Answer the call, it might be your last chance.